Higher education is facing one of its toughest moments in history. Since 2019, more than 60 colleges and universities have shut their doors for good. Public confidence in higher education? It's plummeting. Financial pressures, they're mounting. And the question that so many institutions are struggling to answer is this: how do we not just survive, but thrive? What if the answer has been in front of us all along? Women's leadership isn't just about representation. It's about resilience, innovation, and the kind of collaborative, student-centered thinking that higher education desperately needs right now.
I do think that there's an overall challenge, particularly it's not just higher education. It was true in the library world as well, where there's kind of a legacy to what the work that we do. And if you rely on that legacy alone, it's hard to be successful because the world around you is changing dramatically. So, I think I think embracing transparency is incredibly important. Surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you are. There are certain things I know and that I do well. And I think it's really important to play to your own strengths. So you have to know your own strengths. But it's very important to have people around you that can help make things happen. We don't make things happen on our own.
Barbara Mistick makes it clear: higher education cannot survive by relying on legacy alone. The world is changing too fast, and that's exactly why women's leadership is so vital right now. Women leaders bring the transparency, collaboration, and adaptability that institutions need to move forward. Over the past few years, I've had the privilege of speaking with some extraordinary women leaders in higher education. Their approaches are unique, but the impact of their leadership is undeniable. Let's start with authenticity. Higher education is in the midst of an identity crisis. Trust is eroding. Students and families are asking tougher questions. Faculty and staff are navigating uncertainty. What's needed now are leaders who are real, transparent, and deeply self-aware. Leaders who don't just show up, but show up as their full, authentic selves.
What I would say for those other leaders from the margins is that even though you may not see yourself as represented as you should, as we should see ourselves represented, trust yourself, trust your experience, and own your space. You should believe in it. You should take it out and look at it and decide what remains relevant and what doesn't. But believe in your mission. Being from the margins, and you could be from the margins for a host of reasons, but whatever it is, it's not something to apologize for, and it's not a deficit. It's a part of who you are, and you have to embrace all of who you are if you're going to be a leader.
Authenticity isn't just about honesty. It's about creating an environment where others feel safe to do the same. And when leaders lead with authenticity, they build trust, they encourage open dialogue, and they strengthen the very foundation of their institutions. Traditionally, higher education leadership has followed a top-down model: decisions made in closed rooms, policies handed down from above. But today's challenges are too complex for one person to solve alone. The leaders making the biggest impact today, they bring people to the table. They listen deeply, and they create space for diverse perspectives because they know that the best solutions emerge from collaboration, not control.
I would describe my leadership style as consultative, and by that I mean I am very interested in understanding what others around me are thinking and talking about and how they approach an issue. Mm-hmm. And I have expanded, just as I did when I was a faculty member, my capacity to be more and more engaged with broader people in terms of what that consultation looks like. And I think it really stems from my experience as a I would say when I was a new professor, I was not sure-footed enough in my craft to let a lot of control out of my hands. I only became a strong professor when I was involved in a team teaching program with my colleagues in the department and with students, where it was not all prescribed every day. And I think that experience then influenced my capacity to really think differently about how we learn together. I think that that experience that is grounded in my faculty experience has really lifted up that skill set for me.
Barbara Farley's approach isn't just about leadership, it's about impact. When leaders prioritize broad engagement and invite diverse voices into the conversation, they don't just make better decisions, they create institutions that are more adaptable, more inclusive, and more resilient. Collaboration isn't a nice to have. It's how colleges and universities will survive and thrive in futures that demand flexibility, innovation, and shared purpose. For decades, the path to university leadership has been narrow and rigid, reserved for those who followed a traditional academic trajectory. But the reality? Higher education needs leaders who think differently. Many women in leadership today didn't take the expected route. They've worked in different sectors, navigated different industries, and developed a problem-solving mindset that higher education needs now.
I've started my career in medicine. Trained as a pediatrician and then did training in public health and epidemiology. Spent a long time at the Centers for Disease Control, both doing domestic as well as global public health. And then started my journey after 20 years there. First at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where I helped them start their global health work, and then on to CARE, the international humanitarian organization that focuses on ending global poverty, and then in the Chicago area, looking at wealth inequality at the local level. So for me, the through line has always been, how can I help further equity and social justice? How can I do that using the tools that I had as a public health professional? And then looking at more broadly how economic inequity influences everything from health on. So that's been the through line for me, is social justice and equity, and how could I use my skills to hopefully make a difference.
Helen Gale's journey from medicine to global health, philanthropy, and most recently higher education illustrates why institutions today need leaders who think beyond traditional academic boundaries. She brings a systems-level perspective shaped by years of tackling complex global challenges. And in a time when higher education is grappling with financial instability, declining enrollments, and shifting demographics, the leaders best equipped to think outside the box are often the ones who have never been confined to it in the first place. Higher education should be about students, but too often institutions prioritize tradition and even the financial bottom line over transformation, clinging to old models that no longer serve today's learners. Women leaders are changing that. Instead of asking, how do we preserve the institution? They ask, how do we design an institution that truly serves students?
When we started the process of designing the next strategic plan, we very intentionally took a design thinking approach because we're all aware of the criticism of strategic plans, that they're all plans and no strategy. And so my question was, how do we keep strategy front and center of everything we do, not just at the beginning of a strategic plan, but throughout? And the design thinking methodology really caught my imagination. And what it does, just as a really quick primer, as to keep us focused on trying to understand how our students and stakeholders experience the college. So the question isn't what do I want to do, but what do our stakeholders need us to be? It requires us to focus on the problems we're trying to solve, and then to design solutions that we prototype and test and iterate. So instead of being initiative driven, so what do we want to do over the next 3 years? We asked, what would have to be true for our students to succeed, for us to be financially stronger, for our community to feel a sense of belonging? And we went from there.
Elizabeth Mead's approach to strategic planning isn't just about having a plan. It's about making sure that the plan actually serves students. By using design thinking, she shifts the focus from institutional priorities to what students and stakeholders truly need. This kind of student-first leadership isn't just effective, it's essential. The institutions that will survive and thrive won't be the ones clinging to outdated structures, but the ones that continuously reimagine themselves through the lens of their students. Resilience isn't just a leadership trait, it's a necessity, and women in higher education leadership have to be resilient because the path hasn't been easy.
But also, as a woman of color, another big challenge has been people doubting my ability, right? And wondering, why am I in that room? One of the most frustrating things was I was invited to give a keynote at a university, and it was over lunch at this meeting. And, I dress professionally all the time, but that day I had on a black suit and a white shirt, and I thought I looked like a professional, and someone came up to me and asked me to bring him some salt. She thought I was the wait staff, and I was offended by it, but I didn't let him see how offended I was. When I stood up, and after they introduced me, I said, yes, I am the speaker. Yes, I have a PhD in biochemistry. And I'm not a wait staff. And then I laughed it off, and then I continued, right? So humor has been very important to me to help navigate these things. Whenever I get upset, remembering my grandmother's words, don't ever let them see you angry. That has helped to keep me grounded.
Wanda Jordan's story is one of resilience, of refusing to let doubt, bias, or exclusion define her. And she's not alone. Women of color in higher education leadership have long had to navigate spaces where their presence is questioned. But every time they rise, they make it easier for those who come next. Because representation, it matters. When students, and especially students of color, see women leading at the highest levels, they see something even more powerful. They see what's possible for themselves. This isn't just about breaking barriers. It's about reshaping leadership itself, so the next generation doesn't just aspire to belong. They know they do.
There's a lot we need to let go of still. What's hard about these historic places, 125 years were historic. You see that old building behind me, that's my main hall. And that building's never going to go away, but it needs to be renovated. We have some new buildings. But what we need to let go is the idea that the glorious past is everything, and that somehow today is not as good as. And we've been working on that. Today is glorious. Today is the future glorious past, and so each generation needs to be appreciated and also have appreciation for what has come before. But we have to be more successful about not letting the past tie us down, and that we have to move forward. So the big challenge on the go forward is, how do we keep reinventing a way that is life-giving for what the world needs our graduates to be able to do 10 and 20 and 50 years from now?
Higher education's future isn't in the past, it's in the bold choices we make right now. As Pat McGuire reminds us, we can't afford to romanticize tradition or resist change. If we're serious about the future, we have to reinvent what leadership looks like. And that starts with who we choose to lead. Embracing change means embracing new leadership. Women leaders bring the vision, resilience, and student-centered thinking that higher education desperately needs. But talent alone isn't enough. Institutions must take action. If you're hiring, advocate for a woman candidate. If you're in leadership, ask the hard questions about institutional support for women leaders. If you are a mentor, become a sponsor. And if you're a woman leader, step forward with confidence because higher education needs you. The time for incremental change is over. The future of higher education, it begins now.